In the early 1900s, cereal companies launched marketing campaigns that would shape 3 generations of humans into believing a manufactured truth. Over decades, they promoted a simple idea: breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Within a few generations, this corporate message had become medical gospel, repeated by doctors, teachers, and parents as unquestioned truth. But here's what they didn't tell you. Before cereal companies needed to sell more product, most of human history had entirely different eating patterns that worked just fine. For over a century, we've organized our entire morning routine around this single belief. We've built school lunch programs, workplace productivity theories, and family guilt trips on the foundation that skipping breakfast will destroy your metabolism, fog your brain, and derail your entire day. Mothers everywhere have weaponized this phrase to get children to eat their cornflakes. Nutritionists have built careers defending it. But what if I told you that the Romans sometimes viewed eating breakfast as gluttonous, that medieval people often considered morning meals excessive, that for most of human history, the idea of eating a dedicated morning meal was either luxury for the rich or necessity for manual laborers, but never a universal health requirement? Today, we're going to trace how marketing messages became medical doctrine, and why the story of breakfast reveals something darker about how corporate interests shape what we believe about our own bodies. Because once you understand who really promoted the importance of breakfast, you'll never look at your morning routine the same way again. Let's start with a man who believed cornflakes could stop masturbation. Dr. John Harvey Kellogg wasn't just a cereal inventor, he was a Seventh-day Adventist who ran a health sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan in the 1890s. Kellogg genuinely believed that spicy foods, meat, and sexual desire were connected, that bland grain-based foods could cure what he saw as America's moral and physical decay. He wasn't trying to create a breakfast empire, he was trying to save souls through digestive reform. But here's the first surprise. Kellogg originally created his cornflakes as part of a bland, therapeutic diet for his sanitarium patients. His original cereal was deliberately plain, designed to suppress what he called carnal desires. The sweet, palatable cereals we know today, those were actually created by his business manager, C.W. Post, and later by Kellogg's own brother, Will, who stole the recipe and founded the Kellogg Company specifically to make money, not save souls. This matters because it reveals the first layer of breakfast mythology. The foods we now consider essential morning nutrition were originally medicine, specifically, medicine designed to suppress human sexuality. When Will Kellogg broke away from his brother's sanitarium and started mass-producing sweetened cereals, he wasn't thinking about optimal nutrition timing. He was thinking about shelf life, profit margins, and how to convince Americans to buy processed grain instead of cooking eggs. But even more fundamentally, the very concept of a standardized morning meal was alien to most of human history. Food historian Caroline Yeldham points out that Romans often believed eating only one meal per day was healthiest. They had a term for morning eating, ientaculum, but it was mainly associated with children, the elderly, or manual laborers who needed energy for physical work. Medieval Europeans were often skeptical of breakfast. The word itself, breakfast, literally means breaking the fast, and that fast was considered spiritually important. Eating before midday was associated with the taverns, where men would consume rere sopas, morning meals washed down with ale and wine. Medieval moralists sometimes assumed that anyone eating breakfast probably had other lusty appetites as well. In a deeply Christian society that valued fasting and self-denial, morning meals could be morally suspect. Even into the 1800s, breakfast wasn't standardized. Abigail Carroll, author of 3 Squares, The Invention of the American Meal, documents how middle and upper-class Americans might eat eggs, pastries, and pancakes for breakfast, but also oysters, boiled chicken, and beef steaks. There was no breakfast food category. Morning meals were just smaller versions of dinner, often leftovers from the previous day. So when did breakfast become important? The answer lies in 3 converging forces: industrialization, urbanization, and the rise of processed food marketing. But the story is more manipulative than you might expect. The Industrial Revolution changed when and how people worked. Factory schedules demanded that workers show up at specific times and maintain energy throughout long shifts. Unlike farm work, which could be flexible and seasonal, industrial labor required consistent fuel. This created the first genuine need for standardized morning meals, not for health, but for productivity. Cereal companies seized this opportunity with remarkable cynicism. In 1917, Kellogg's began advertising that their cereals would make workers more efficient. By the 1920s, they were funding nutrition studies that conveniently concluded breakfast was essential for workplace performance. But here's the second surprise. These weren't independent scientific studies. They were marketing research designed to create demand for a product that didn't previously have a market. The real breakthrough came in the 1940s with various cereal companies' coordinated campaigns promoting breakfast importance, including General Foods' Eat a Good Breakfast, Do a Better Job campaign for grape nut cereal. This wasn't subtle product placement, it was coordinated propaganda. Grocery stores distributed pamphlets explaining the importance of breakfast. Radio advertisements featured nutrition experts, declaring breakfast the most important meal of the day. The campaigns even included workplace productivity studies that showed workers who ate breakfast performed better, studies funded entirely by cereal companies. But here's where the story gets darker. These campaigns worked so well that they transcended marketing and became medical orthodoxy. Within a generation, the phrase, "breakfast is the most important meal of the day," appeared in school textbooks, hospital nutrition guides, and government dietary recommendations. The source was forgotten, but the message became gospel. This reveals something crucial about how nutritional wisdom spreads. Dr. Marion Nessler, a nutrition policy expert at NYU, has documented how food companies routinely fund research that supports their products, then use that research to influence government guidelines. The breakfast myth became so embedded in American culture that questioning it seemed like questioning health itself. Meanwhile, the rest of the world was catching up. As American-style processed food spread globally after World War II, so did American breakfast beliefs. Countries with entirely different eating traditions. Japan, where traditional breakfast was miso soup and rice. Mediterranean cultures built around late, large meals gradually adopted the American model of sweet processed morning foods and the ideology that justified them. But here's the third surprise. Even as breakfast became culturally mandatory, the scientific evidence supporting its necessity remained thin. Most studies showing breakfast benefits were observational. They showed that people who ate breakfast had better health outcomes, but they couldn't prove that breakfast caused those outcomes. People who eat regular breakfast might simply have more stable lives, better access to food, or healthier overall habits. More problematically, many of the studies were funded by breakfast food companies. A 2013 analysis found that research funded by the breakfast industry was 4 to 8 times more likely to find positive effects of breakfast eating than independent research. The Quaker Oats Center of Excellence at the University of Chicago, the General Mills Bell Institute of Health and Nutrition, the Kellogg's Corporate University. These aren't neutral research institutions, they're marketing arms of cereal companies. So what happens when we actually examine breakfast with independent science? The results are uncomfortable for anyone who's built their morning routine around cereal boxes and guilt. Recent randomized controlled trials, the gold standard of nutrition research, show that skipping breakfast doesn't slow your metabolism, doesn't cause weight gain, and doesn't impair cognitive function in healthy adults. A 2014 study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed 300 people for 16 weeks and found no significant difference in weight loss between breakfast eaters and breakfast skippers. A 2019 systematic review of 13 randomized trials concluded that breakfast consumption had no meaningful effect on weight or metabolic rate. Even more revealing, some research suggests that intermittent fasting, which necessarily involves skipping breakfast, may have metabolic benefits. Time-restricted eating, where people consume all their daily calories within an 8 to 10 hour window, has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammation, and promote cellular repair processes. This directly contradicts the breakfast industry's claims about metabolism and blood sugar stability. But here's what's really fascinating. The breakfast myth persists despite this evidence because it's become culturally and psychologically embedded. Food anthropologist Abigail Carroll points out that breakfast rituals now serve functions that have nothing to do with nutrition. They're about family bonding, morning routines, comfort, and identity. Telling someone they don't need breakfast feels like attacking their childhood, their parenting, or their self-care practices. This reveals the deeper story about how food beliefs work. Once a nutritional idea becomes moralized, once we attach virtue to eating breakfast and shame to skipping it, evidence becomes secondary to identity. People don't just eat breakfast, they believe in breakfast. And beliefs, especially ones tied to childhood memories and daily habits, are remarkably resistant to facts. The breakfast myth also demonstrates how corporate messaging can become internalized as personal health wisdom. Millions of people genuinely feel hungry in the morning, experience energy crashes without breakfast, or perform better after eating. But they interpret these experiences through the framework that cereal companies created. They assume their hunger validates the importance of breakfast, rather than recognizing that regular breakfast eating has trained their bodies to expect morning food. This isn't to say breakfast is harmful or that everyone should skip it. The point is that the choice should be based on individual preference and lifestyle, not on manufactured nutritional dogma. Some people genuinely function better with morning meals, others prefer to eat later in the day. Neither approach is inherently superior, despite what a century of marketing has taught us. What's more troubling is how the breakfast myth reflects broader patterns in nutrition science. Again and again, we see corporate interests funding research, shaping guidelines, and creating health beliefs that serve their bottom line rather than public health. The sugar industry's decades-long campaign to blame fat for heart disease, the dairy industry's promotion of milk as essential for bone health, the supplement industry's creation of vitamin deficiency fears. Every morning, millions of people around the world wake up and reach for a bowl of cereal, convinced they're making a healthy choice based on scientific evidence. They're actually participating in one of the most successful marketing campaigns in human history, a campaign so effective that it erased its own origins and became indistinguishable from medical fact. This matters because it reveals how easily our most basic beliefs about health and nutrition can be manufactured by corporate interests. The phrase, "breakfast is the most important meal of the day," isn't ancient wisdom passed down through generations of healthy ancestors. It's early 20th century advertising that became so culturally embedded we forgot it was advertising. The next time you hear someone declare the importance of breakfast or any other nutritional truth that happens to benefit a specific industry, it's worth asking who first said this and what were they trying to sell? Because the story of breakfast teaches us that sometimes the most powerful lies are the ones that become so familiar we mistake them for facts.